Bruce, you must have something really good too.
Of course I do. It's Bruce Danielson, and I guess I'm here to entertain you too.
Good evening and welcome to Carnegie Town Hall. I call this meeting of the Sioux Falls Planning Commission to order. I'd like to emphasize a few items. Out of courtesy for everyone, please silence all electronic devices at this time. We look forward to hearing your testimony tonight and appreciate you joining us. In an effort to have sufficient time to hear from audience members, we ask that when you come to the podium, please state your name and address for the record and limit your comments to 5 minutes to allow us to hear everyone to speak. At this time, we will consider the consent agenda. Please read the items on the consent agenda.
Item 2A, petition REZ 012173-2020, rezoning from the AG Agricultural and C2 Commercial Neighborhood and Streetcar Districts to the I2 Heavy Industrial District located east of North Marion Road and north of Interstate 90. Legal description portion of 24-10250 as shown by exhibit, Sioux Falls City unplatted, Minnehaha County. Item 2B, petition rezone 012165-2020, rezoning from the RD1 Twin Home Duplex Residential Suburban District to the RT1 Single Family Residential Traditional District located at 916 South 9th Avenue. Legal description, Lot 9 of Block 10 of Roland's addition to the City of Sioux Falls, Minnehaha County. Item 2C, petition REZ 012175-2020, rezoning from the RT1 Single Family Residential Traditional District to the RT2 Townhome Residential Traditional District located at 416 North Nesmith Avenue. Legal description Lot 5 of Block 49 in Shaw's addition to the City of Sioux Falls, Minnehaha County. Item 2D, petition sub-preliminary 02114-2020, preliminary subdivision plan for Cooper Crossing Addition located at the southeast corner of East 26th Street and South Veterans Parkway. Legal description tracks 8 and 9 of the Copper Creek Addition to the City of Sioux Falls, Minnehaha County.
We will also have on this consent agenda the Planning Commission briefing of Tuesday, February 4th, 2020 minutes, as well as the Planning Commission meeting of Thursday, May 7th, 2020 for consideration. Correct?
Correct.
Very good.
Chair, I have to recuse myself from the consent agenda.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead and go. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to any of these items in addition? If so, we will pull these onto the regular agenda to be able to discuss them in detail. Okay, seeing no objections, I'd entertain commission action.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second Johnson.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying yes.
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 Yes. All those opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. And I entertain a action from the commission on the consent agenda itself. Or I guess, yeah, the regular agenda.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the regular agenda. Johnson.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the regular agenda. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
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 All opposed, no. Motion carries. Please.
Item 5A, petition CU 011-980-2020, conditional use permit to allow a car wash within 250 feet of a DD form located at 1500 South Minnesota Avenue. Legal description is vacate 24th Street lying adjacent and West 37 South 44th Northeast 1/4 and West 60 North 88 Northeast 1/4 and West 40.5 SE 1/4 and West 112 Block 5 and Northwest 1/4 Block 12 Hayes addition to the City of Sioux Falls, Minnehaha County. Staff recommendation approval with conditions. Number 1, provide a minimum of 6-foot high screen fence along the entire east property line, and 2, provide landscaping as indicated on the submitted landscape plan.
Jason Bieber representing Planning and Development Services. This application is going to be deferred till the special meeting that we're holding on Monday, June 8th at 7 o'clock.
Okay, thank you. I believe our tradition of this commission has been if there's anyone present who would like to speak to this item tonight because they cannot be at that deferred meeting, now would be your opportunity to come forward and address the commission. Is there anyone who has interest in doing that tonight? Seeing none, and entertain commission action.
Mr. Chair, I'd move to defer item 5A until the June 8th special meeting.
Second, Nyberg.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to defer this item to June 8th at 6 p.m. 7 p.m., excuse me. Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying yes.
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 Yes. Yeah. All those opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you.
Next item is 5B, petition rezone 012-168-2020, rezoning from the S2 Institutional Campus PUD to the S1 General Institutional District located at 2001 East 8th Street. Legal description is Lot 1 of School for the Deaf addition to the City of Sioux Falls, Minnehaha County.
Planning Commissioners, Albert Schmitz, City of Sioux Falls Planning and Development Services.
Okay, go ahead. So recusing himself.
In this application, we have the applicant is Koch Hazard Architects. The owner is Sioux Falls Ministry Center. The request is for the entire parcel that's currently owned by the Sioux Falls Ministry Center at this location at 2001 East 8th Street. It's approximately 13.77 acres. It's currently zoned S1, or S2, sorry, PUD institutional. Right now, they're requesting a rezone to S1, which, just for your knowledge, allows for the exact same uses as the current zoning district. So there's no change in uses that could be done by this zoning change. The biggest change that you're going to see forth on this would be that we don't have to treat them as one unit together. And so things like connectivity sidewalk between different properties that end up developing in this area won't have to be mandated. So they won't have to have pedestrian or traffic connections between those. But they also won't be able to utilize shared parking, shared landscaping plans, shared signage plans, things like that. But that's not their intent. And so we figured that the rezoning to S1 was the best way to follow the intent of the development, which was already zoned for this kind of use, but to do it independently of those things. And so when you look at the whole area, there's residential on the north side and the east side, and commercial on the south half of that property. And the current plan in front of you, the one use that we know is looking at going in here, is the Children's Inn on the northeast corner of this. So the west half is already an existing facility. Used to be the School for the Deaf facility. Now it's the Empower campus. And so that has been remodeled and is in use today as that kind of facility. And this new facility would go in a northeast in the future here after the rezoning. I believe it's looking at later on this year or next year, somewhere in that kind of time frame. Now, it's important to note that with this kind of use, with the single family being this close, regardless of the rezone, a conditional use permit will be required because of the type of facility and how close it is to the residential. So looking at kind of what it's going to look like, this is kind of one of the proposed views that we have from the northeast to look at that facility. And so you can see it's really designed to help blend in a little bit more to the neighborhood. It's not a solid commercial looking structure, it's more residential. And that's kind of the real quick on that side of it. So just to kind of reiterate for you, staff perspective, we're full recommendation of approval on this because the applicant, it's in the spirit of the Sioux Falls Comprehensive Plan because the zoning district isn't changing any of the uses that can go there. The neighborhood has been talked to at the public hearing at least once, and then this process as well about the proposed changes. And a conditional use permit will allow for yet one more public hearing to talk about this specific issue as well, especially with the exact details of the site once those become forward to you for that specific site. And then any improvements that come through here, they're still gonna have to meet our minimum standards on buffer yards and standards that are gonna help buffer that neighborhood for this kind of use in that area. And the access will also need to be approved that they're showing through our engineering office, both on 8th Street and on St. Paul Avenue. So conceptually, you're seeing what it's looked like now, but for the actual plan to get approved, staff will have to review fully and look at, and we feel like those can easily be accomplished, and therefore are recommending approval at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Albert. Any questions from the commission?
Got a question for you, Albert. We talked a little bit about it yesterday, but can you talk about the preliminary scope of this plan? Maybe more so just so neighbors can understand that the way the depiction is on the property is maybe not necessarily exactly how things are going to end up. Is that right?
Absolutely, good question. So when you look at what we're looking here, when we do a rezoning, the first and foremost thing to think about is we really try and ask and really almost demand that they do some sort of conceptual art to show what they're thinking about putting out there. And so that people can get a rough idea of what kind of use, what kind of, it kind of could look like. But when you look at this conceptual plan, that we're not holding them to this specific standard. That building size could change. It could move over left or right. The number of parking stalls isn't determined by this plan. But this gives you an idea of this kind of use, how can it kind of sit on this? And then when they actually get into the full design, looking at the soil test, things like that, that could maybe alter how something on a site could have to sit, then you might get the final changes. But this gives you a rough idea, kind of what kind of building you're looking at, how generally is it going to feel in that kind of neighborhood. And then when it comes time to actually permit, yeah, that's where we're gonna look at that and go, all right, is the access in that exact spot the right place to go? So for instance, on this specific site, you look at the access on St. Paul. The discussions will be had going forward, I guarantee you, about is that the exact right spot for that, or does that need to move slightly north or south, and those kind of things. And so staff and the engineering office will work with the applicant when they submit those plans to really talk about the potential issues at hand, trying to protect the neighborhood for all these things that we see, and what can work on site with what they have available to them physically and what makes sense for how they need to use that property. So, thank you, good question.
Any other questions from the commission? Okay, seeing none, thank you. Is the applicant here this evening? Come forward, state your name and address for the record, please.
Stacy McMahon, 716 North Waltz Avenue in Sioux Falls.
Anything you'd like to add to the report?
We have done quite a bit of preliminary analysis. At the time of this plan, we didn't have the survey completed, topographical survey, but we do have that now. And the plan that you're seeing there is working with the grades as we still are studying that. We have preliminary soil borings, and those came out fine. So the preliminary work that we've done, we've also looked at BMP drainage, what's going to be required, because it was a track, you know, and now it's a building. It'll have different kind of runoff. So we're already working into those calculations, and everything seems to be on the right track at this point.
Okay, very good. Is there anyone from the commission that would like to ask a question?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Stacy, can you tell us just a little bit about the landscaping plan? I know there's mature trees that are currently in that neighborhood. Is the desire to keep those for the neighborhood?
Yeah, definitely. I've already driven around and looked at them. They're marked on the survey. Because we didn't have the survey when this was done, the trees are currently paved over, but we've adjusted the plan, and it's just small adjustments to make room for those trees. So if they are healthy and it looks like they're not ash and they're desirable trees, they're big, beautiful trees, that we will try to keep as many as possible.
Thank you.
Great. Other questions from the commission?
I don't necessarily have a question, but I personally am aware, but while we have an audience here, could you maybe explain some of the work that Children's Inn does and tell us about your mission?
Is that we have
Absolutely.
a couple of other people here? Okay, I'd rather defer that.
Yep, perfect.
State your name and address for the record as well.
Amy Carter, Children's Inn. My home address is 5813. Amy Carter, Children's Inn, home address 5813 West 35th Street. In response to your question about what Children's Inn, our services, we are a domestic violence shelter and licensed group home for children who have been abused or neglected. We have been serving the Sioux Falls area since 1977, starting as a 2-bedroom home and then continuing to expand our services to meet the needs of the community. We primarily serve victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking through our shelter services, but then we also offer crisis intervention, counseling, parenting classes, a variety of outreach services as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to this item?
Hello, I've never been to one of these before. Do I introduce myself?
State your name and address for the record. You bet.
I live right on the corner there at 201 North Leaders. My name's Ben Wiedemeyer. It sounds like they do great work. I was interested when I got the notice, so I did some research of my own, and everything I could find says it's going to lower my property value by about 20%. Even Children's Inn's own website admits that it will lower your property value. So, I mean, I don't know, if there's any reason I should have to pay a tax on this, I mean, I can't even afford health insurance. And it's great that Danny Sanford gave him $16 million to build this thing. But why is it coming out of my pocket now? So I'm just stating my objections. I'm not trying to say that they don't do great work. They obviously do. So
Concerns about property values.
yeah, that's all I have.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep. Thank you for stating that. Anyone in the commission have a question? Okay, seeing none. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to come forward and speak to this item? Okay, seeing none. I think it would be appropriate to have one of the applicants come forward and kind of respond to the one objection we did have, just what your thoughts are as well. So we usually give the applicant kind of the final rebuttal if they would like to have it.
Rich McCorris, 2312 South Bramer Drive. I'm on the board of directors for the Empower Campus, which is the current ownership group of the site, and I appreciate the neighbor stating their concern. I think how we've thought through that and looked at that and the selection of who we're seeking to sell the property to is we've sought to find the best possible buyer that would use the best land, and also looking at the history of the Children's Home Society and how they've treated their properties. So if you take a look at Children's Home Society and their history throughout our whole state and how they've cared for their properties, it's of top-notch quality. And then the design that Coke Hazard has put together is they've put together something that looks very residential and is not going to be, lack of a better term, tin shed. And so our confidence in the project is in the quality and the history of what Children's Home Society has done, and also the quality of what Coke Hazard has put forward in regarding the site as a whole. And then the other item I think that's really important to add is if you look at the quality of programming that the Children's Inn has done and the issues that they've actually had on site, sometimes it's more of a perception than it is reality regarding the trouble that actually happens on site. There's a lot of perception that a domestic violence shelter is going to have a lot of problems on site, but one of the things I've learned in this process is actually those who are the abusers, they're actually behaving their best when the victims are actually at the shelter as they're trying to regain that relationship opportunity. So one thing I just want to share is that perception that, crime's going to go up, perception that those issues are going to rise is not always matched with reality because of the good programming in place, the good relationship with the law enforcement, and then finally, again, the way that the Children's Home Society cares for their properties.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the commissioners? Seeing none, close public testimony, and I'd entertain commission action on this one.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve item 5B.
I'll second. This is Janet Kidams.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve item 5B. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, just want to put on record that historically I served on a impact team for the United Way. Saw firsthand how resources from the Sioux Empire United Way were used by the Children's Home Society and specifically the Children's Inn. And they're just a top-notch facility. It was clean as a pin, and at no time did you go to the facility and think you were going to be anything but safe, and the surroundings around the facility were just outstanding. So I don't feel, as the last testimony that came up, I would agree that this is a very good use, and I think it's a blessing that they found this size of land available in town, where I believe the majority of their demographic would seek services and shelter from this facility. So I'm totally in support of this rezone, and I wish them the best.
Okay, thank you. Other discussion?
Mr. Chair, I'll just also add to that and say that I, too, am in support of this. I think it's important in particular to look at, it being a rezone request, and if you look at it, as Albert kind of stated, technically, the zoning isn't really shifting a whole ton, and I understand that, it just certainly was green space before, but the zoning was there for a building to be constructed. I also think the architect will take good care in moving forward with this project. So I would just say thank you to the applicant for bringing this project forward. Thank you to the ownership group. I think they developed a nice campus here. So I will be voting in support.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion?
Yes, I'd just like to echo my support for this project. Working in the nonprofit field myself, I've had the pleasure of working with Children's Inn and Children's Home Society on many different projects for the community and quality services, quality programs. And I think the placement of it on the Empower campus is incredibly well suited to serving our community. So I fully support this.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion from the commission? On the phone even, John? Okay.
Just to support the application consistent with the comments that have been previously made.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. What was your vote, John?
It was yes.
Thank you. Okay, that's been approved. That's the end of our regular agenda. Now, any public input on non-agenda items? This is commonly at the end of our agenda, and if there is an item that wasn't on the actual agenda that you'd like to come forward and speak to, you're welcome to do that at this time. Anybody interested in public input on non-agenda items? Doesn't appear so. I assume there's no new business. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to adjourn. Johnson.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you very much. We are adjourned. Make it a great night, Sioux Falls. Stay safe and just do everything you can that helps everybody else.